Well, hello everyone and happy new year. Welcome back to Love, Light and Bullshit Bingo. I am Karen Roundtree and this is my incredibly wonderful co-host.
Yolandi hello. Happy New
Hello.
Year.
We hope you're all doing well. We hope you all had a lovely break over the holidays and are easing your way gently into this new year because that's the name of the game right now. However, we are not going to ease our way gently into Love, Light and Bullshit Bingo because we've got a pretty big topic to talk about today. Yolandi, do you want to take it away and explain?
Yeah. Man, I had a lovely holiday and it was really good. And this is kind of the subject came up because of a discussion that I had with my husband at 4 o'clock in the morning, which was quite interesting after Christmas Day. And we were having a bit of a chat. And I don't know even like how we got onto the subject. Um, but we were basically speaking about like when we first met, which was many years ago, about 16 years ago. And we were speaking about the fact that I was a real bitch back then, right? And and I know this sounds quite funny, but he turned to me and he said to me, "You know what? I really miss that part of you because you've really toned down like in the time that we've been together. But that was really like a part of you that I deeply fell in love with." And that kind of like kicked me in the stomach as he said that because I was like, whoa, what have I done? Like, I have watered down that part of myself in a really big way over the last 16 years. And a big part of it was because of my, like, basically reconnecting with my spirituality and, like, with all the new age teachings and stuff that I was so into years ago and all that type of stuff, all love and light, obviously our favorite topic. And I literally have watered a piece and a part of myself that my husband deeply fell in love with when we met completely down. So I said to Karen, I think we need to speak about this because I've literally been diving into this over the last few weeks. And I'm like on a mission to bring the bitch back this year. So yeah, that's
Yes.
the topic. Bringing the bitch back.
Isn't it interesting because we obviously, I mean, this is the whole premise of this podcast is love, light, bullshit. It's
Yeah.
we know on a very conscious level, we know that this whole idea that, the in order to be spiritual, you must be all about the love and light. Everything must be shiny and love focused and positive and sparkly and all of those things. We know that it's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason we are doing this, because we became so frustrated with that. And yet, still, because I do it too, still we buy into that to some level. Still, subconsciously, we are letting ourselves go down that path of niceness, of smallness. Of I think the word we used when we were talking about it before we start recording was docile. We go
Yes.
down that path of being meek little lambs,
Yes.
even as we're standing here talking about, we both do work where we talk about working with dark goddesses, we both do work where we talk about fire and ferocity and all of that stuff, and yet here we are being meek and docile because, well, why? Because we're expected to be, because we're told that that's right, because we're told that that makes us good people, because we're told that that's exactly what we should be doing as women, as spiritual people, as the reasons could go on.
Yeah.
The top and bottom of it is, by holding back that part of ourselves, by holding back that fire within ourselves, we are making ourselves small. We are diminishing our power.
Yes.
And it's bullshit.
Exactly. And I was actually when I obviously, because you know me, rabbit holes and me are like best friends, right? So when I was like starting to go through it and I'm like, it's again like I just took the one doctrine or the dogma and I just went, okay, cool, I'll just use my other dogma now and I'll just like basically run with this baby now. And I mean that's the one thing I'm so grateful for about this journey, because I think you kind of need to go through the bullshit to get to the reality, right? But it was like it's like this thing is literally like we need to start dissecting our ideas of what this is really about, right? Like, what does it mean? Because the word bitch also, just like using that word is like also for me, it's so derogatory, but I have no other word for it. So for now, this will have to do until I invent something better. But the thing is, like, that whole idea is just like, it's like, it basically, it just kicks us down all the time. It's just like, this is there's a definition. And when a woman raises her voice, when a woman says something loudly, when a woman like stands up and goes, I don't want this, and she starts to speak out, she turns into a bitch. The minute that she says, I'm not happy with this, I don't want this, she turns into a bitch. So what are we going to do about it? Because like, I am just totally bought into it. I'm like, oh yes, but I have to consider why that person is like this because they have trauma and blah, blah, blah. And like, actually, yes, but also no. It's just like, I can see it, but I don't have to take this shit, right? Like there's this like, this is the thing where I'm trying to get into today is like, what's it going to take for us to actually go, I don't want to do this anymore.
And I think that's such an important line there, isn't it? Because I mean, I'm a therapist. A lot of my work is about empathy. It's about being able to walk a mile in another person's shoes. So looking at someone's behavior and being able to go, but hold on, why are they behaving that way? Okay, now I understand. I might not agree with it, but I understand. However, there is a fine line between understanding and what's the word I was looking for? Understanding and kind of condoning. And I think this is where it's funny because this is some work I'm doing on myself, which we always come to the same conclusions, but under different names. And the work I've been doing on myself is how many times do I make my no as a yes without even realizing I'm doing it?
Yes.
Because I'm so frightened to be seen to be too opinionated, to be seen to be sticking my nose in where it's not welcome, to be seen to be being judgmental. We're told that judgment is the worst thing any of us can ever have. And yet judgment, and I'll say this, we've talked about this a lot since we first met. I'll say this over and over again. Judgment to a certain point is actually discernment. And we get to discern what we do and don't want in our lives. And we all, I think as we're moving forward, not just into this new year, but generally into whatever else the future is holding for us, we have to be discerning about what we accept into our lives. And more than that, what we accept into our world. And we can look at the people around us and go, not just the people, in our pockets, in our immediate circle, we can look at the world and say, okay, I understand why that person is behaving that way. I understand that there's trauma there. I understand that there's fear there. There is always fear at the root of bad behavior. Always. That's something I believe. And yet we can also say, and it's not all right. And I'm going to stick my hand up and say, excuse me, no. And let me just take a stand and say no.
Yes.
There is a fine line, but to be discerning, and judgment is a part of that discerning, is not to say that we're also not being empathetic, is also not to say that we're not being understanding.
Yes. And I want to also in there, okay, so not just like people, but like losing your shit, right? Because it just flashed into my head. So like losing your shit sometimes and just actually like, having a freak out, like whatever. It always, that's again, there's judgment about that. There's this whole thing about like, I cannot just go, fuck you, I'm not doing this, right? And just get really angry about stuff because then I'm not love and light enough. I'm not woke enough. I'm not like whatever enough. But part of this human body, this experience is actually giving myself the allowance to go, excuse me, I'm just going to quickly go and have like a shit fit and then I'll be back. But the thing is we keep swallowing everything down. We keep like just keeping it in. And it again then talks to that smallness where sometimes we just have to burst and go, and just do it, right? Because it's okay and it's normal and it's human. But again, we're like, no, that's just not dignified, Yolandi. You can't do that. You can't be swearing at the guy in the road who's a dickhead while he's driving because that's not dignified. But I'm like, this year, I'm really questioning that dignity. I'm questioning all of that because I'm actually going, no, I need to get this out of my system.
Because what even is dignity? We're told that dignity is when we sit there and we act nice and we sort of, we're pleasant and we're, oh yes, you can push past me on the road. Oh yes, you can do this. Is that even dignity? Because also I would argue to be dignified, there need to be boundaries to be dignified. There need to be, if you don't have boundaries, how can you be dignified? If we look at those people that we consider to be, I don't know, most dignified in the world, in the history of the world, whatever. I'm thinking about Audrey Hepburn here, right?
Oh,
being
okay.
my
Yes.
prime example. She's always my prime example of like dignity and class and all of those things. And yes, if you look at her, there is a lot about her that is soft and demure and gentle and beautiful. And also, you know, she could be quite ferocious when somebody said something to her that she didn't agree with.
Mm,
And also she would fight tooth and nail for the causes that were important to her.
yeah.
And also, let's not forget she was, well, I say this, I don't know if it's true, but I once watched a Lifetime movie about her life and it stuck with me forever. That when she grew up in Nazi occupied Belgium, I think it was, and that she wasn't frightened to sort of make her voice heard. She wasn't frightened to do what needed to be done, to say what needed to be said, to actually
Yes.
take a stand where she could. That
Yes.
might be, I might have totally ballsed up that whole historical truth, but you get the drift,
But
you
it
get
was
the
in the
gist, right?
movie.
And in
Yes.
the movie, fine. You get the gist. Like, dignity also requires boundaries. Dignity requires us to say what is and isn't right. But there is something incredibly undignified about just being a pushover and just kind of hiding away in the corner. It's not dignified.
Yes. Oh, sure. Okay. So, like, wait, no, my brain's now going. Um, so here's my thing then. So that dignity, those boundaries, like all of this again comes down to like, how am I anchored? Like, what is my belief system? How do I feel about myself? Okay. So, and like for me, I'm in a place at the moment where I think it's time for my inner bitch to resurrect herself,
Mm,
because I have spent an entire year working even deeper on myself and really with my boundaries and like what is important to me, and like just becoming almost like stronger and stronger in
mm-hmm.
myself. And therefore, I'm almost at that space now where I'm like, okay, it's time. She can step up.
Yeah.
So it feels to me like this whole process of like allowing that part of yourself to come back is a consequence of you stepping more and more into your power.
So,
Yeah.
and it
How does
makes me
that
think,
feel?
100% agree with you. And it makes me think about the episode we did a couple of months ago where we spoke about those buried women.
Mm,
And in the conversations we had before and after that recording, we spoke about the fact that actually when we look at the buried women, we're not just looking at individual people who have been buried under the earth. We're not just looking at the goddesses that have been forgotten, etc., etc. We're also looking at the parts of ourselves that have been buried, at the bits of us that we've buried within us because they're not societally acceptable.
yes.
And it's time for them to come back out. And we cannot reclaim the fullness of our power, the fullness of our wisdom, the fullness of who we are without actually taking it all out, putting it all on the table and saying, okay, what is this?
Yes.
And looking at it through a lens of, and here's something that I also get really, really angered with, is the idea of shadow work. Now I get it. I'm trained in psychology. I understand shadow work are the parts of us that we are denying. And also, I think that the way that the mainstream talks about shadow work is that these are the parts of us that are undesirable. Who says they're undesirable? Who says that? Maybe our job is not just to put them all on the table and be like, oh, that's my shadow. That's the bit. Maybe our job is to actually shine a light on it all and stop even considering it as a shadow. Stop, take away from that mainstream idea of these are your shadows and go,
Yes.
no, no. These are all bits that we have been told to bury.
Yes.
What if we threw them all up into the light and asked what sparkles brightest?
Yes.
Because I dare bet that some of those bits that are supposed to be the dark bits, some of those bits that are supposed to be the bits we've been ashamed of, some of those bits we've hidden because we think we probably should, they're actually our greatest superpowers if only we're willing to look at them.
Exactly. And that was like what became so clear for me, was like that feistiness and that like almost like bulldogish way that I
Mm.
do shit, when I won't let go because I know it's important, and because of that conviction and that fire that I carry in myself. That's the part that I was like taking down, and that is actually one of my superpowers. One of my superpowers is to be calling the bullshit out. So like, like if I hide that, how am I going to serve the world? Like, who's going to be there to go, this is crap, we shouldn't be doing stuff like this? Who's going to run freaky podcasts like this, right? Like, I mean, this is the thing. That is my gift. It's one of
Yeah.
my biggest gifts, and I'm not denying that anymore.
Yeah. Something that struck me a few days ago in the work that I've been doing was around the fact, very similarly, around the fact that I kind of come to a point where I realized how little I trust myself. I often don't trust myself to make a decision. I mean, you're one of my best friends, because you're the one who gets the voice notes going, Yolandi, so I've got this idea, but I don't know about this, and maybe this, and should I do this, and should I do that? And oh my goodness. And actually, because you're wise like that, and you do trust me, she knows the answer. She just doesn't trust herself to get to it. And the lady I was working with said to me, but why have you stopped trusting yourself? And you know what? I could give you a million reasons of the different situations in my life where I have been led not to trust myself. But actually, if it comes down to it, a big chunk of it is the fact that through the nature of my own, I'm going to use the word superpower because we're using it and it sounds cool. Through the nature of my knowings, my intuition, my connection with my intuition, I often know things that other people don't know.
Yes.
Does that mean I know everything? No. Does that mean I'm never wrong? Christ, no, I'm wrong a lot. But I will often see things in the dark that other people haven't seen yet. And because other people haven't seen it, they don't want to hear it. Now, whether I tell them or not is another story. But I need to own that knowing for myself. I need to own what I see for myself. Even if it's to write in my journal and be like, and I'm so angry that they can't see it yet, but I can.
Yes.
I don't have to do anything with it. I don't have to tell them. Christ, I don't have to say to somebody, for example, listen, that boyfriend you've got, absolute douche. You might want to get rid of him now because here's the things that I see. Because I could be wrong because of all of the different things and because it's their mistake to make. But also what I do get to do is own that for myself and say, okay, I see that. Me recognizing that is not me being a bitch.
Yes.
It's not me being mean. It's not me being some hideous woman who wants to see the worst in everyone. It's me being able to see in a way that not everybody can.
Yes.
And so I'll recognize that, I'll honor that, and then I'll move on from it.
And this is the other thing, right? There's such a link here for me because like that again, like in those parts, those judgy parts, that's where our intuition gets quashed, right? Like it's like those moments in your body when you're going, oh fuck, it's wrong, like that doesn't feel right. And like, that's the thing. It's just like that's why we speak about the dark feminine, right? That for me, it's just like it's the dark feminine because it's the intuitive side. So obviously, what's society going to do? Let's push that down so no one uses their intuition anymore. So no one listens to their own divine guidance anymore. Okay, so I mean, for me, it's just like it's so freaking interlinked, isn't it?
It's
beautiful.
And it needs, don't get me wrong, I think to do this and to do this from an empowered place needs a certain level of self-awareness, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because it needs us to be able to go, okay, I understand where my judgment is coming from a place of pain or of my own fear or jealousy or whatever it is. And I understand where my judgment is coming from something that's deeper. It needs a certain level of self-awareness to be able to, okay, this is something that needs to be expressed. And I need to be like, hold on there. I need to speak up. And this is something that probably just needs to be talked through with my nearest and dearest so that I can process it. That's okay. Like it requires us to be fiercely in touch with ourselves.
Yes.
To almost be the ringleader of our own circus, I guess, so that we can take all those wild animals of judgment, of pain, of fear, of all, work out what they are, and then understand where judgment is a superpower for us and where our bitchiness, where our inner bitch needs to run the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it funny? I find the word bitch so funny because I remember when I first got Callie and I remember somebody stopping me in the street and saying, is she a dog or is she a bitch? And obviously I understood that as a female dog, she's a bitch. But I remember being really quite offended by it and like, don't use that word in my presence. Don't use that word. And now I look at it and I'm like, can we not own that? Why can't we? I'm thinking about Meghan Markle's podcast she's got that's all about the different labels we apply to women.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, I wonder if we were, maybe she has done an episode, I don't know, but I wonder if we would actually look at that, even at that label of bitch. What does it even mean?
Yes.
What have we taken it to mean, and what does it really mean? Because doesn't it just mean a wild woman?
Yes, exactly. And that, like when I said in the beginning, like I don't even have a word for it, but this word has got so many negative connotations. But that wild woman, it's like, like I kind of like have this image of this woman with like big crazy hair and like she hasn't brushed it and like she's all like, like smeared face full of like mud and stuff. And like that again, we come back to the wildness thing, right? Like it's like that intertwined wildness with like untaming that part, like just getting it
Yeah.
out there, like get out the mud, fucking speak up, like do what you need to do. It's just like that wildness again, it needs to come back.
And it makes me think about, there's two things it makes me think. One is I struggle with the idea of wildness at this point in time, because again, I think it's a word, I think it's a concept, I think it's an idea that this industry of ours has
Yes.
taken and packaged up and put a pretty elbow on it. And they're gone, there you go. And so now you can pay a small fortune to do a course on how to be wild. You can read 10 different books on how to rewild yourself. And some of those books I love, by the way. You can go and do a certification in wildness. You can have a weekend retreat where you can go and be wild. How can anybody else teach you how to be wild? When you rewild an animal, literally what you do is throw open the gate and go on then.
Yeah.
What we need to do to rewild ourselves, all that any of those books, those courses, those retreats can ever do is open the gate. And don't get me wrong, that's often very helpful, but they open the gate. They can't make you wild. You have to choose. They can't teach you something. The wildness is in here. It's in here, and I'm really conscious. I'm meant to touch my heart, and I've actually ended up grabbing my boobs, so maybe that's important. It's in here. Like, it's something that is such, it thrums in your veins with every
Yes.
single beat of your pulse,
Yes.
just as it thrums in the earth with every beat of her pulse.
Yes.
That is the wildness. You don't need anybody to teach you that. Just start listening and start doing, and then that's how you become wild. Stop being so scared. Is that easy? No, but it's important.
Yes. And it's the raw in me, right? Like when I caught myself screaming at this man this week, I was just like, it's the raw in me that just wants to come out. Like my best drumming circle was when I was able to actually drum and just scream. And I was just like, there's so much screaming that was waiting inside of me to come out because of all the times when I had to keep my freaking mouth shut and when I couldn't say what I wanted to say. And because I had to be decent and I had to be like, you know, like docile and demure and all that like bullshit that I don't want to be anymore.
Yeah.
So the thing is, you need to find out like what's happening inside your body. Where's the parts of you that's going, I need to scream, I just need to get this out, or whatever it is for you. But it's like it's like an ocean, right? Like it's like a mad freaking, for me it's like a wild ocean inside of my being that's going, I just want to do this, and I'm not going to be wild every single moment of every day because my tides are going to turn, right? But it's just like, but those moments when I'm needing to be crazy and wild, I'm just going to allow that to happen now. Like 2023 is going to be that for me.
But then I wonder, you say I'm not going to be wild in every single moment. I would argue you are. You're just going to be a different kind of wildness.
Yeah.
Like sometimes wildness is out there shouting and swearing at this man in the street. Sometimes wildness is going to be lifting your skirt up and dancing, you know, on tables, whatever you need to be. Sometimes wildness is going, I'm not working today.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to go and curl up at the bottom of a tree and I'm going to lie here for the whole day.
Yeah.
You know, think about the animals, think about the ways that wild animals actually, you know, lions aren't just wild when they're like roaring and going and killing prey. They're wild when they're lying on the rock and baking in the sun as well.
Yes.
You know,
that's beautiful.
we
I
are
like
wild
that.
in every moment, and we have lived too much of life now. We have lived so much of life now in this world that has put our time into boxes, has put our here's how you should behave into boxes, has given us ways of behaving that we've forgotten that everything we do can be wild. Every moment can be wild. Every moment can be blessed with the magic of wildness.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where we lean for this year, into that wildness within us, and see where it takes us in every moment.
And I feel like for me, and this is just for me personally, but like that wildness has an element of freedom to it that I think is like a gateway, is like an expansive gateway for me. Like that potential freedom of not having to bite my tongue or hold myself back or make myself small. That for me is like, it's a portal way into something much bigger and brighter. That's how I'm feeling about it. So it's just like, it really makes me excited to just go and scream a bit more, lose my shit a bit more, do whatever the fuck I need to do a bit more.
I wonder what, if you think about yourself being wild, I wonder when what comes to mind, like when was your wilder self? What was she doing? How old was she? Where was she?
Oh man. Sure. Yeah, she was in the forest though. She was like with my parents, like hiking in the forests and
Yeah.
stuff when I was younger, and just running around and like, yeah, totally barefoot and like climbing rocks and all
Yeah.
of that. That was like the happy place, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think
Yeah.
about when I was 24, 25, I went backpacking. And I think about the fact that I wouldn't think twice about dancing on a table.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think twice about, I went off hiking when I was in Australia. I went off hiking around Uluru by myself, not up it, just around it, but by myself. And I remember walking along and being like, I just, I don't care. I would walk past people and they go, hello. And some people I go, hi. And other ones I was like, I don't like their energy. So I just go, and I didn't care. I didn't care if they didn't like me. I remember coming back and for the first time, I mean, it's wavy today, but for the first time in my life, I looked down, I was like, my hair's curly
Yeah.
because I'd spent so much of my life drying it straight and GHDs and all the rest of it that I was suddenly like, oh, this is what my hair's like naturally. I hadn't dyed it for 4 months. So it was, I came back and for about 3 years when I came back, I couldn't wear high heels because I'd spent 4 months continually in flip-flops and my legs had just lost the ability to be like that. And I was like, oh, this is who I am. This is what, oh my God. I remember just having this sense of, and I did all sorts on that trip. I bungee jumped, I jumped out of planes, I did all sorts of things. And I remember none of it was at all restricted by this idea of who I should and shouldn't be, who I was and
Yes.
wasn't. I was just able to go and be me.
Yes.
And I remember coming home and the boyfriend I had at the time had been traveling at about the same time as I had. And we kind of got back together and talked about where we'd been. And he said, you know, I've basically been away for 6 months on a holiday. You've backpacked, you've gone and you've found yourself. Now, I was really fortunate to get the opportunity to do that, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But that was it. I took out all of the what I should be doing. I took out all of the, oh, well, this is what me that everybody else in my life knows would be doing. And I
Mm.
just went wild, just went absolutely wild.
That's beautiful, babe. And I'm like, this is like just if you're listening today, like what is it for you? Like
Yeah,
what is that moment? Like where is it? Like,
absolutely.
for me it's like being in the water, running around, like doing my thing and just being crazy. And
Yeah,
it's just like for you, it was like being able to take those moments of freedom and just like experience it. So while you're listening, what is it for you? Take a moment to think because it's just like, we're standing here in the beginning of a new year. It's always a good time to start thinking about like, what is it that I want to do? Where do I want to go?
yeah.
Go find your wild. Go and find your wild. Go and find that dark, wild, crazy ass, beautiful person.
And isn't that it?
Yeah. Oh, dude, makes me happy.
Me
Okay,
too.
so can we mission this year? Can we like
That
do
is the mission.
and we will basically come back again at the end of the year and we'll probably be here because my biggest dream is to have like big hair like a lion. So when you spoke about your hair, I'm like, oh my God, my hair needs to be wilder. So I'm probably going to end up sitting here in 6 months time with even wilder hair than I have now. And I
Sounds
just
good to
think
me.
it's like we need to just like it's a year of reclamation. And this for me is really like this my taking my inner bitch back, taking all of these dark parts of myself, and I'm putting this in inverted commas if you're listening to the podcast. But like Karen said, it's just like, what if none of it is like dark? What if all of it is basically just magic waiting to happen?
Absolutely that.
Beautiful. Okay. Oh, okay. So I hope we've inspired you. I hope
To go
that
and
we
be
have,
wild.
yeah, given you a little bit of a tickle to go and check out the inner bitch. Yeah, and then like we're going to be back next month to speak about whatever's going to come up next month.
Yes, we will see you next month. And until then,
Okay.
be wild, be bitchy, and be free.
Yay!
Yay.
Awesome. Thank you
All
so
right.
much for joining us again. Really appreciate all your support. Like and subscribe and do all the good stuff that you need to just to follow us, and that would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.